podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your new account, go to Squarespace.com and use the code CAST.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 38. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Scott Johnson.
And joining us for our very first live-streamed Twit video edition of FourCast is Brian Brushwood, host of NSFW on Twit and Scam School at revision3.com. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, America, and especially you two, Tom and Steve. How are you guys doing?
I like to think
Steve instead of Scott because I'm a terrible person. All right, take two.
Joining us is Brent Brushwood of. Also, you heard
and Tom.
Also, you heard laughing in the background. Justin Robert Young, also host of NSFW on Twit and the Weird Things podcast at weirdthings.com. What's up, Jason?
I'll tell you what, Tim. I could not be more delighted to be on with you and Sahar.
Sahar.
Yes.
They haven't told me that since high school.
From the Emirate of Utah comes Sahar Johansson.
That's me.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, this is our first video version of FourCast as we have brought FourCast onto the Twit network. So what does that mean if you are a previous FourCast audio subscriber? Well, let's take a minute to tell you. First of all, nothing is going to change in your current audio subscription. You will still receive audio versions of FourCast the way you always have. However, if you want to get a video version, there'll be that too. That's pretty much it.
And we should clarify, they won't also be getting it in 3 chunks or 3 or 4 chunks anymore.
Oh, that's
They'll
a good point. Yeah.
Back to the original format, which was 1 solid hour of nonstop false name hilarity.
Exactly. Thank you, Scott.
Oh, thank you.
I had to think about it for a second after
right.
all that. All right, we'll start with a prediction from our listeners. And Brian and Justin, you're welcome to join in on the discussion of this email. Just don't want you guys are a little shy. I don't want you to hold back.
Actually, I guess I was unfamiliar with the format of the show because I actually already had written a prediction, but before the show even. I mean, can I show it real quick?
Yeah, sure. Actually, that's sort of in the spirit of the show here.
Before the show even began,
let's see it.
And in fact, I signed it right here, but you can see there it is right there.
Oh, look at
that! And you're holding up today's newspaper in the. Oh wait, no, but yeah, that's wow. You're going to be good at this show. I can tell you. I can tell already.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. And it certainly didn't look like you hastily scribbled Brian will screw up immediately on the back of a notepad, but rather took the time to really write down, a clear vision.
No, I believe that was chiseled out of a rock, and so the black was actually the part that was chiseled back, so you would see it, and the brown was because it's the dirty outer part of the rock, right?
And then I taped some pages on top just because I was looking for a place to keep my extra pages laying around. So I put them on the back of the tablet.
You don't want them flying away. All right. Yeah. Chris wrote into fourcastpodcast@gmail.com and said, here is my crazy-ass prediction. P.S. Whenever you talk about crazy-ass predictions, I can't help but think of this comic. The fact we will be able to download knowledge and information, think The Matrix or Johnny Mnemonic, into our brains on demand is a given. What isn't talked about is how we will compile this knowledge into a form that can be impressed onto our brains. Scientists will have mastered the art of storing and copying information to and from our brains, but won't have figured out how to build the information in a way that our brains accept. This is where learners come in. They learn a skill or memorize information and then have an image of that data copied from their brain into a storage device. Once a skill is complete, it can be sold or traded. This will spur all kinds of economic growth and social issues. It will also spell the end of education as we know it. Thanks, guys, for the great show.
Kind of a strange days / Matrix kind of outlook on the future of life. I kind of like it. It's pretty good.
It is very strange days. That's a good point. So you might have to worry about viruses on your learner that you bought, and I bet there'll be a lot of exploitation of smart people herded into warehouses and forced.
Well, but then again, like the idea of what a smart person in completely changes at that point, right?
Yeah, people, you'd have to prove that you actually know things before you got this job.
Yeah, or like, I mean, if we go through several generations of people getting this stuff downloaded into their head, then really you would almost see more of a correlation between the have and the have-nots economically with intelligence, right? If you're able to just, drill the brain, drill the information into your brain, and let's say theoretically we can do it more efficiently than book learning.
Yeah.
But
So
isn't that in a rudimentary way what already happens with Ivy League educations? I mean, if you're rich and privileged, you get to go to a Harvard or a Yale, where the wisdoms of the ancients is slowly and inefficiently drilled into your head. Whereas if you grow up on the wrong side of the tracks, you don't get any of that stuff.
Well, emphasis on inefficiently. See, that would be the problem. We're relying on really old men who are stuck in their ways and have forgotten a lot of the things they know, and we're slowly sort of absorbing it through crappy books and terrible instruction. It'd be far better if we had this in some sort of binary code that never changed, that wouldn't degrade over time, and it would be just sort of planted in us. And then again, the other side of this says you start doing that, and you start losing the ability to be fluid and react to a more modern culture or a time that is different than the time where these things were taught, and therefore we sort of get in a rut where other cultures sort of pass us by because they're less interested in what's happened before. They're more interested in blazing new trails. So I could see a downside to this little idea.
I'm still thinking about the Ivory Leg schools and why they're so bad at track. Because you just can't run on those ivory legs.
Tell me I didn't say Ivory Legs. I said Ivory League, didn't I?
I want to point out that on NSFW, now Tom has jumped on 2 Brian gaffes. So,
I said Ivory League. I said Ivory League. Maybe I didn't.
It was probably just my headphones. It's probably not you.
And Skype.
But you know what?
Will correct us
even if you didn't, it just made me chuckle. Just thinking about Ivory Leg schools.
Ivory Legs.
Right. Let's get into the short-term predictions. These are predictions of what we think will happen in the next few years. Could be in your area of expertise. It could be sci-fi stuff you see in the pipeline. Whatever you got, these are your more practical predictions. Folks, you can send us your predictions to fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. But right now, let's hear from Brian Brushwood. What do you got on the short-term horizon?
On the short-term horizon, and this is something born out of an argument I got in with somebody recently, where I got as far as saying, there's a contest for cars that drive themselves. And then my friend, who is only 10 years older than me, explodes with, I've been hearing about these self-driving cars forever. Back in the 70s, they're going to have the self-driving cars. They even had it demonstrated on roads and blah, 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 blah. And I'm gonna firm up and crystallize the prediction in that the transition from self-driving people driving cars to self-driving cars will be so gray and so blurred that it'll be really difficult to point on any one moment when all of a sudden the shift was made. Because now in my lifetime, we've seen cars that went from having cruise control to now they have GPS, and now they've got, front sensors, rear sensors. Now they've got them that they can kind of tether themselves and follow at speed behind somebody in front of them. So I think in my lifetime, I'm going to, at least on the highway, be able to get on the highway and just let go of the wheel for hours at a time. That's my short-ish term prediction.
Were you listening to Tech News Today earlier?
No.
No, this is, I wanted to know honestly because it's uncanny. We were talking about the cars that are being made for blind people to drive, which is a whole other issue, and they're based on the self-driving cars. And I made the prediction that in 100 years, we will have suddenly realized we're not driving our cars anymore, but it will happen slowly. I totally agree. Just like you're saying, they keep adding these little features in.
Not only did I screw up the co-host names, refer to Ivory Legs, but now I've stolen the co-host's own ideas and packaged them as my own.
No, I wouldn't say stolen. I'd say supported with fine logic and rhetoric, the absolute brilliance that you and I share.
I would also like to point out that Ivory Legs would be a great name for a burlesque dancer. I want to just get that on the record.
And probably is.
If I could say one thing real quick on this idea, Jim Didrikson in the chat room says that the self-driving car died because people didn't want it, and I could not disagree more. The reason the self-driving car died was because it required a major upgrade to existing infrastructure. Back in the 70s when they were talking about it, they were talking about you had to install these electromagnetic strips for them to stay on. The technology was not there. Now that we have adaptive robotic technology, I guarantee you it will happen, and it'll happen slowly. And just like Tom suggested, and I totally support it through clever argument, it'll happen so slowly that we won't even see it happening.
I totally agree, and I want to make a further point about this. Other technologies have taken this path, so it isn't just cars, and it will happen slowly. You're right, and a lot of people want this stuff right away, and when they don't get it, they call it a failure. So when virtual reality headsets were a flop in the early 90s, everybody poo-pooed it and said, forget it. We finally have the technology where we could really do that right, and nobody's doing it. So what I hope people do is not get lazy or get disappointed in the current day technology and kind of wait for the stuff to sort of flesh itself out. We've seen it happen with devices like cell phones. I will point everyone's attention to the Apple Newton in the mid-90s, and I will point their attention to how horribly people believed it failed. But that kind of stuff is so commonplace now that you just have to wait for stuff to catch up a little bit. So the day I'll be driving a car, or rather the car will be driving me, is probably not that far off, because we've already paid our dues with these incremental chunks of technology. We have a bit to go, but because of infrastructure stuff, like Brian says, and I totally agree, that has slowed this down to a crawl, but there will be, this day will come. I believe it.
There's someone named Scott in the chat room. It's not Scott Johnson. It's a different Scott who said that'll take the thrill.
Steve Johnson.
I'm sorry, Steve. It'll take the thrill out of driving. And I disagree with that, too, because I think we'll still be able to drive for thrills. And actually, it'll be more of a thrill because you'll be on, a special area. You'll go to a driving park where they have like crazy mountainous roads, and you'll be able to take more risks and drive in a more thrilling manner than you do when you commute to and from work, because it'll be meant for that. It'll be recreation the way we ride horses now. We don't, the thrill of riding horses is gone because we don't ride them to work anymore. No, you go out onto a ranch and you ride a horse, and you could race horses. You could do all kinds of things with them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to the day that I can take my self-driving car around the woodland area to murder a fox with my friends.
Yes.
Of the aristocracy.
A little, what would that be called? The Fox Hunt motorized edition?
I don't know.
Yeah. It'd be the Volkswagen Fox. They already have one.
I think they do take Hummers now out on those Fox Hunts.
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. I think they really do. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I saw it in the movie The Queen. All right, let's move on. Let's move over to Justin Robert Young's side of the short-term prediction street. Next few years on the horizon. What do you see in your crystal ball, Justin?
Now, you want to know, this is funny because I was thinking about this before Brian mentioned the self-driving cars thing, but I'm gonna almost go in the opposite direction from you guys, in that I don't think that the future of automobiles will necessarily only be in what we've learned, or we've always known the automobile community or economy to be big companies manufacturing and dictating where trends go. My theory is that between battery technology and a coming revolution in just construction of all matter, like let's say maybe like a nanotechnology kind of thing, that components will be so cheap and so moldable that we can see almost a revolution in homebrew automobiles, that we are going to be looking at more customization and, buying cars from smaller and smaller companies as opposed to larger and larger companies dictating the trends.
Craft automobiles.
There we go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's all taking the same path as, for example, what we're doing right now. We're all creating a little show that 10, 20 years ago we couldn't have even thought about doing, and eventually hard physical products will take that path as well.
But I don't know. I guess that's kind of, I guess that's part of your prediction, is that you predict there'll be something to affect the supply chain that makes it as easy for an individual to suddenly upscale and mass produce his little car design that he came up with.
Or smaller. Yeah. We're just, it's getting more granular. But yes, I do, to answer your question, I do believe that it will necessitate nothing short of a revolution in terms of, either off-the-shelf parts that can fit into or have a much larger versatility, or just a easier way to create short runs of automobile parts.
And those predictions are not necessarily at odds. you could have both of those come about, in fact, in parallel tracks, where the big companies are making more and more of these self-driving cars, which spur people to want to start their own homebrew cars so they can actually drive and have more control over the driving.
So,
I
Tom,
wonder if
you and I talk all the time on the show and also on Current Geek about what people are doing with Legos. Now, stay with me here. I know this is going to seem a little bit... But I'm not saying traditional Legos are going to be the cars of the future. But what I am saying is the idea of Legos, the concept of why Legos are so versatile and people at MIT are building amazing robots out of them, is that they are modular and very sort of versatile, and you can connect a lot of different kind of stuff together, and the design isn't so limited by the materials. It's more limited by the mind of the designer. Why couldn't we get to a future in the near term where we are buying these kinds of parts, large-scale parts, that are so interchangeable that anybody with a little bit of smarts could sit down and say, all right, well, my car is going to be this big and this long, and it will be self-driving because I'm going to do this to it, and it's going to use this kind of engine, which I pulled off this shelf, and it was all fairly inexpensive, and for 10 grand or something, I've got my car, and anytime I want, I can pull the back out and put something new in there because, again, Lego-like, it's kind of modular. It seems possible to me. That doesn't seem that far-fetched.
Yeah, and I guess, the other thing that I just want to highlight is I'm not necessarily saying that it's like, Brian spends 3 weeks in his garage and looks up a wiki and builds me a car. It could
because
just
we all know I don't have any kind of talent for that kind of thing.
No, I mean, I'm just saying that, it could be something smaller. It could be, let's all get together, a little bit of capital, find somebody who's an engineer and make a short run of cars, that we sell that isn't necessarily have to be for the super luxury market, that can be more of a middle of the road kind of regular sedan sort of thing, but with that little bit of personality or absolute, I guess, one of a kind nature to it that would make people want to buy it and make them popular.
So,
all right,
Scott, you mentioned the Lego thing. Is there any historical precedent that would match the prediction on a different scale? Like I know we're talking about Legos, but Lego isn't quite comparable in that's all designed by a single company for a single purpose of interchangeability. Whereas in the marketplace of free ideas, you got a million different prediction comes from.
Oh, there
it is.
Yeah, you locked up on us for a second there. So but I think we got the gist of it, which is open source Legos essentially.
You broke up, but I think what you're getting at is this idea of do we have to come to some standards, and I think we do. So for the railroad to explode the way that it did in the late 1800s and early 1900s required standardization on construction, on parts and materials, on the way the thing ran, on how things would connect. That all had to sort of happen then. And in a smaller but kind of similar way, the automobile industries had to sort of do the same thing. We're all using drive shafts. We're all having wheels and tires on our cars. We're all dealing with some of the same sort of things. They're all shaped a little different. Decided to design it. But the idea of us moving forward into a world where we could do this, you would have to come up with some standards. No question about it. And I don't know who's going to do that, who's going to even agree to something like that. But it seems like they could maybe look at the web standards people and say, oh, look what they're doing. They seem to kind of have an idea how to do this and still be in business. So I refuse to believe there's not a way to do that.
All right.
Isn't that also just kind of something that the market dictates? I mean, just real quick. I mean, if everybody's buying certain components, and those components will get cheaper and more people will see an opportunity to sell them. So that's, I mean, in my mind, that's kind of how these standards get set.
Open source hardware.
Yeah, it is how it gets set. It's how this, like we said here a second ago, it's how podcasting and its standards got set. It's how we've decided to do what we do. It has all sort of come from a little piece here and a little piece there, and then one guy starts doing it and somebody, before you know it, we've got inexpensive ways of pulling all this stuff off, and it pisses off the old media. Well, it's going to piss off old car too. Those guys aren't going to love this.
Oh God. Well, they'll all be long dead. What I want to get to I want to get to the point where I'm able to BitTorrent a Bugatti Vera. That's
yeah, but you exactly you get the plans off of BitTorrent. You run them through your 3D printer. You print out all the parts, and you build yourself your car. Done.
There we go.
Bugatti in your driveway.
After I look at the wiki, because I don't know what I'm doing. like Brian.
Brian can help you with that. All right, on to prediction number 2 on FourCast, the long-term predictions segment. These are the long-term sci-fi, weird, strange, turn your world upside down sort of predictions. Roughly 50 to 100 years, maybe a little longer. And we will start with you, Justin Robert Young. What do you see when you gaze out a little farther?
Oh, man.
Not literally. I mean, just your prediction.
Oh, okay. Because there's, I don't know.
Because you don't have a window.
Weird Things TV and then a window. You know, it's hard, and anybody who listens to the Weird Things podcast will know that there's really no future that we talk about on the show that does not, on some level, involve what advancement, Brian?
Oh, that would be the singularity, Justin.
Yes, the ever-coming singularity. So,
wait, the singularity or the singularity?
Oh, see, there it is again. There it is
because
again.
The singularity would be really
We're all gonna
more
sing.
By the way, coming to Fox this fall, it's Battlestar Galactica meets Glee, the singularity.
Last time I was at Ivory Leg School, they taught me about the Stevularity. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Oh, Steve.
I'm sorry, you were saying about the singularity.
So yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that the singularity is almost going to revolutionize beyond the sense of comprehension what we think of as conscious. Even what we were talking about before with the crazy ass prediction in terms of downloading information into our brains. You know, I just think what we even think of as our information will be revolutionarily different. You know, what we know, what is valued. You know, right now, you know, the information in very specific constructs is how we define intelligence or something of worth. Our economy runs off it. I mean, and that's what I say. And what I'm really getting to is we're going to descend into complete chaos. In 100 years, it is going to be, you know, I think people think that, you know, the movement toward a future that involves a singularity is always kind of viewed in this very, harmonic sort of sense. I think that it is absolutely the end of civilization, and we will have to rebuild from those ashes.
So you're like a Bill Joy. You're like gray goo is coming, and we're just going to all be eaten by the nanobots.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's we're going to be eaten. I just don't know if my prediction is this, that the future of knowledge is going to come too quick for us to transition to it easily. And there's going to have to be a massive reorganization for which, most of us won't survive.
All right.
Wow.
I've got so many issues with this, Justin. And you know I love you and respect you on most things. But first of all, I don't know what it is with the number 100 years that all of a sudden everything's crazy in 100 years. People have been saying it for forever. And yet the world now is functionally very, in some surface levels, it's very, very different from 1910. But on other levels, very little has changed. We still have our wooden doors that we walk through. We still get up in the morning. We go to work and we make money and we come home. It's so little has changed on a mega scale in the last 100 years. I don't understand why everyone all of a sudden imagines, society destroying robots in the next 100 years. And the other thing about the singularity, I don't think the technology will come in time. I think the complexity of the human mind is like a fractal. And the more research we do and the more we start to understand it, the more we understand all the intricate ways that we have no idea how it works. And the idea that, hey, well, we're getting faster and in 100 years we'll be there, I couldn't disagree more.
Well,
I think there is an asymptote, right? Where as we get closer and closer to the singularity, we approach it slower and slower and we never reach it. That's quite possible. Yeah.
But also, one could argue that now
Steve,
we're looking at accelerated technology in a way that that humankind has never seen. And I don't just mean the last 5-10 years. I mean post-war till now and we've talked about it on the show before, it's an incredible spurt of growth, technologically speaking. If that keeps up, dude, I'm not so sure Justin's out smoking crack. I think he may be on something.
Here's the thing: is we already
that's the point, Brian. It's not the progress; it's the acceleration. You know,
No, here's the thing. We already have societies right now that are living completely in the Stone Age. We've got some that are barely out of the Bronze Age, and they're living on the same planet with people on cutting edge, with downtown Japan, and the world's not blowing up. So what makes you think that if, let's say, we advance another age beyond the information age or the communication age or the space age into another one, what makes you think that, well, that's just too fast and now all of the world's got to go to crap?
Well, because I believe it will specifically be in what changes. That we've seen shifts in how we make money, in what makes money, and how we get food. We've seen very, very, very fundamental turns in our society. I am, asked to look into a crazy version of the future. I'm just going to go ahead and hedge my bet on this coming change, that the idea of a collective consciousness will happen too fast for us to fundamentally understand it, which is the engine with which we are able to handle all other change, and that we will respond poorly to it, at least in the initial offing. Now, that being said, if it doesn't happen, then all right. I'm cool either way. I'm just going to bet. It's like betting on your favorite sports team to lose.
You're voting for Skynet. So if you win, great, you won the bet. But if you lose, hey, man, at least the world's still around.
Dude, totally.
That's why when I look forward in 100 years, I always just say we won't be wearing ties. Because you know what? You look back 1910, no ties. I think
so.
It's
We'll be back to
100-year cycle on the tie thing.
Are you thinking like Logan's Run kind of jumpsuit kind of time with no ties?
I venture very close to crossing the host line by even saying that. So I don't want to start having to make my own predictions here. That's not why we do this show. That's not why we have guests on.
I'm going to go ahead and say that it goes with the pet tie hybrid in the future. So now out our fabric around our necks, we look for small animals to hang. And that way it's almost like a status symbol.
Bred to enjoy being around your neck.
I was thinking the opposite. It's like, the whole tie is a metaphor for a noose around your neck. I just say it goes the reverse, and full on there are companies who require you to come to work wearing a noose around your neck. And you're like, what's up?
And sit in an electric chair.
That's right. And drink poison every day.
Time for poison.
Sure. And I'm the one with the unreasonable dystopian future. Fine.
Well, let's put that claim to the test and turn our long-term prediction over to Brian Brushwood. What is your long-term sci-fi weird, strange, turn your world upside down prediction?
It's a little bit chunky on my end for what I'm receiving, so I'm going to keep talking.
Long-term prediction over to you, Brian.
There we go. I don't know if I'm back or not.
Yeah, you're back.
You're back.
Okay. My prediction is going to sound a little bit weird given how hard I was just criticizing Justin, but I believe that we will see in the next 100 words. Oh. Ivory legs.
A really short prediction in the next 100 words. The following. This is supposed to be long-term.
Okay, in the next 100 years, we won't see the singularity as people like Justin are proclaiming it, but we will see a virtual singularity. It's obvious that we all want to plug in and become some kind of hive mind, but I'm convinced that the technology will be very, very slow to get us to a point where we can plug in our brains and experience a virtual world as if we were there. However, we already do experience some of that to this very day with stuff like World of Warcraft and Second Life. God, I'm not even talking right at all. Warcrats is what I meant to say.
Different game.
But the point is we're going to see more and more in that. We're going to see where objects created in these virtual worlds are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, where there will be parts of them that go to war. There will be people who go to work, never leaving their office. Their bodies may go to crap, or maybe they spend 3 hours a day working out in the gym, but we're going to live our life more and more virtually, and we're going to see less and less of a point of going out for anything. And in many practical ways, it will become as if the singularity has happened without any of the messy wetware that goes with it.
Wow.
I don't know about that, because as we have advanced in technology that keeps you from having to work physically as much, we tend to redirect our efforts towards recreationally going outside, biking and hiking. You don't think that as what you're saying happened, let's say I think that's not a bad prediction, we wouldn't start to see more like extreme movements into doing things outside?
I think that'll certainly be from an entertainment perspective, from a health perspective, from a creating the endorphin flows that come from being outside and being active and doing the things that our bodies were built to do. We'll certainly see all of that. But I'm talking about from a money-making perspective. Already for leisure, we're seeing ourselves engage in games because they're easy and we understand them, and it's easy to wrap our minds around being avatars going around killing bad guys. We're already enacting these bizarre, unhelpful fantasies that we have of destruction, and we're letting them loose in a safe environment. I think we're going to continue to see that, but now it's like for example, look at me right here. I love being able to walk right upstairs into this virtual studio and talk virtually to tens of thousands of people and express myself. Now, in real life, I'd have to go to a big arena and get everybody together, and it's very impractical in order to do a performance to entertain people. I'm going to say we're going to do more and more of that, less physical moving for virtual product. Like the ideas that we put out on this podcast are a virtual product that don't require any kind of trains or planes or freight trucks in order to get it out there. And so as a result, anything that can be experienced virtually and get 90% of the benefit out of it, we're going to start seeing that way. That's why worlds like World of Warcraft are exploding. And that's why people are watching so many movies at home, is because what you love about seeing the movie is not the getting in the car. It's not the waiting 20 minutes through previews. It's not the buying overpriced popcorn. It's the movie itself. And it's that virtual good that we're going to get more and more efficiently.
Okay, Brian is speaking my language, and I am with you on this future. However, there's a couple of key factors that are missing now that may come in later, and that is a critical mass. So we talk about World of Warcraft. I host the instance, so I'm with the world's biggest guild, and we revel in the fact that we have this 5,000 active person guild. But then when you really think about it, in the larger scale of things, when it comes to a virtual singularity, there are only 12 million World of Warcraft players. That is not very many people in the larger scale of things. So it's going to take
the population of Earth just 500 million years ago. I mean,
that's true. It's a good point. It's a good point. But don't you think it's going to take some serious penetration in markets that currently don't give a crap?
Yes. The limitation is, first of all, the technology is very much a limitation now. The ability for people to understand, like most people playing World of Warcraft started off as gamers and they instantly got it. They're like, oh, I'm an avatar and I've got the one button and now I have two buttons and now I could kill people two different ways. And third of all, and I think people undervalue this, is I gave World of Warcraft a chance and I loved City of Heroes, but I'm just not into the Wizards and Dragons thing. And the moment, for example, Star Wars: The Old Republic comes out, I'm going to be eyes deep in that thing. And I think that as there become more and more entertaining worlds for people to engage, you're going to get more of that. But also the limitation is the marketing for World of Warcraft is all for entertainment based. How about if all of a sudden a major corporation, something where people, engineers need to develop new processors, they physically have to go to work every day. If you gave them the opportunity of going into the virtual office every day and they didn't have to leave and they were able to see their kids 2 more hours a day, they would give up the physical movement in order to go to the factory, in order to experience it all virtually. And I think that the technology will be there for us to take that really in the next 50 years or so. A lot of people are going to cyber commute, not even telecommute, where it's like they're just going to virtualize themselves and it'll be rare, if ever, that they even step into the office.
But why would we need to imagine ourselves in the virtual constructs of what we know as an office now? That's I mean, I don't know. Brian, as per usual, your future scenarios are always way too reserved. I don't think that we get to this point without, we don't sniff this collective possible, opt-in version for elements of our lives without saying, wait a minute, how is this not an efficient way to run 90% of my life?
But that's the way it always begins. It always begins aesthetically using familiar constructs. And then it eventually evolves where people are like, wait, why are we even bothering with this extraneous stuff? You already understand what it means to be here virtually. So why are we even bothering to dress it up as if it's reality? And you're right, that will change. But the initial leap, people want to feel like it's a generational transformation. Like, I already understand what it means to go in the office and experience my day and get my work done and then go home. And so the initial jump will be as close to that as we can technologically make it. And then we'll get more and more efficient to where eventually we're just, you're downloading your own insights, and you could just visualize a certain part of a chip, plug in your brain, and then there it is right there.
And the first step towards that is starting your own blog. And one of the fastest and easiest ways to publish a high-quality website or blog is on Squarespace.com. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace has an easy-to-use UI. Creating and managing a website or blog is simple, optimized for beginners and CSS experts. So you got hundreds of design templates to choose from if you really don't want to mess with coding. Or if you're an expert, you can get in there and get under the hood and tweak all those yourself. Easy importing. If you've got WordPress, Blogger, Movable Type, and TypeAdd, you can bring all that data over. It has a forum, photo gallery, native Twitter widget that allows you to add multiple accounts. So really, there's no reason not to try it. You can get a free trial at squarespace.com. Import your blog right now. Try it out. See if you like it. No credit card needed, just to try it out, build out your website. And then if you decide to purchase Squarespace.com membership after the free trial is over, you get 10% off when you enter the offer code CAST. That's C-A-S-T. So go check it out at Squarespace.com. Let's move on to the crazy-ass predictions now. And I believe we will start with you, Mr. Brushwood. If you would,
Yes.
Put your mind 10,000 years away, or just come up with your wildest prediction. Give us a doozy.
This is my wildest prediction, is 10,000 years in the future. If you were to be frozen now and defrosted 10,000 years from now, I'm not going to say everyone. There will be a segment of the populace that will make no sense to you at all. But I'm going to say somewhere on planet Earth, you will be able to experience a life that is virtually identical to the one you lead right now. And the reason is because out of the entire history of mankind, we understand structurally what it must have looked like in ancient Egypt. We have writings, we understand the hierarchies out there, but we have no idea what their accents sounded like. We have no idea what they did on Thursday nights that nobody bothered to write down. Nowadays, everything we do is on the record. And it's amazing how everything's cyclical, from fashion, from everything's being remade now from my childhood. And in a weird way, I think that there's something right about that. I can't say enough about how excited I am to take my daughter to go see Tron this fall. And in fact, earlier I showed her the movie in anticipation of getting ready for it. And I think there will be generational things that are homages to things that came before them. But also, once we hit what do you call it? The post-economy society, where all of a sudden everyone could do
whatever they want,
afford anything. There will be different segments of the population, much as you read in the Diamond Age, where they decide to live as Victorians because that's what they felt like was best for the soul. And even though it was anachronistic in so many different ways, it's what they chose to do. And I believe that we will enter a mashup society of pop culture where everything will reference everything that came before it. And there will be movies that are remakes of movies that are remakes of short stories based on movies, et cetera, et cetera.
In your utopian ideal future, there's one hole in it. You said when you started this, if they could freeze me now and then unthaw me in 10,000 years, I could live the life then that I'm living now. And that would kind of suck, because the whole reason for me getting frozen now is so I could see super future. And instead I pop out and it's like, corn dogs and cheese whiz again.
And Brian wants to live in the future version of colonial Williamsburg, where, we have our version of the blacksmithy and everything hanging out.
But that's just as we have nowadays. We have people who decide to live as modern primitives and people who decide to take the advantages of technology nowadays, but live as if they lived in the 1910s or 1850s or whatever. You're going to see that times a million as we get farther and farther in the future, and there's more possibilities for how you can live.
So are you suggesting we've run out of forms? That we've because of acceleration of culture, we've exhausted all the different ways that you can live, and so from now on, just like in music, they say like there's no new ideas in rock and roll. It's all just kind of chopping up what's come before. Like our entire culture will become that, where the only originality will be in the way you combine the different pieces of previous cultures.
Not at all. And again, think in terms of a fractal. Like we for the first time, only in the last 150 years have we gone on the record with audio recordings, and only in the last 70 years have we gone on the record with video recordings. So really, pop culture, as it's been decided for our society, only exists a fraction of a hair of the tenth of an inch of a micron of all of humanity. But now that that's the case, this is the beginning of pop culture. So 10,000 years from now, there's going to be homages, just as we still are remaking the Iliad and the Odyssey, and we're paying homage to all the great. The first time that we have anything written in literature, likewise, we're going to see that 10,000 years in the future with everything about society, because now we have the family sitcom, and we have the news, and we have all these ways that things are recorded at a fidelity unprecedented in the history of mankind. And I have to imagine that 10,000 years from now, as long as copies survive, there will be a yen to revisit those days.
All right, hold on real quick. I have one question for you. Right. Are you saying that there will be an element of society for which you can live like we can in 2010, or that a trend in, the society you woke up in 10,000 years?
I said that was I would like to think that's exactly what I said, was that there would be some segment of the populace where you could choose to live exactly as if it's as we know it today. But given my history of speaking improperly, all podcast log, I'll be the first to admit maybe I didn't communicate that effectively.
No, I just wanted to make sure. But I mean, it would be not the majority, right? It would be the way that we look at the Amish.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
With less butter churning. But I want to go back to what my co-host Tim Mercer said earlier. He said the following: this idea that we iterate on everything. So everything's an iteration and a combination and a piece of work that is sort of based on what came before. Makes a lot of sense to me, and I don't really see that much difference between we all look at the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we think, oh, well, those are very different decades. Really, they're just iterations on top of each other. And the time of ancient Greek and the time of ancient Rome and the time of ancient Egypt are just constructs of the time that seem really unique to us now because there's enough iterations in between us that it seems wholly unique. But really, it's all connected. They've just iterated. They've said, all right, well, here's a good way to embalm people, and we're pretty good at farming, and these guys got aqueducts, and before you know it, here we are. And I may be using a tablet to draw artwork on over here on the Cintiq that I'm looking at, but really, that is not that much different than a stone tablet and a rock. We've just refined it and iterated it to the point that it's now what it is, and who knows what it will become in the future. So I think Tom made a pretty good point.
And specifically, what I'm interested to see happen is the way we continue to use previous generations and previous times as a shorthand to communicate certain things, whether it be an attitude or a general theme or a feeling. For example, if you want to telegraph abject fear in a society, it's easy to use rhetoric and imagery from the 80s at the height of the Cold War, and people get it, and you know what that means. And even if there are people who have never lived in the 80s, but they see that imagery and they know what it means to be afraid of the Red Menace on the other side of the world.
Yes, McCarthy romantic poetry. All right, over to the crazy-ass prediction from Justin Robert Young. I hope you got one, and hopefully it will blow our minds apart. What is your crazy-ass prediction?
Yeah, well, let me just point out that for those of you who are expecting another crazy-ass prediction where we're all going to celebrate because we can still get a Nathan's hot dog 10,000 years from now, you'll be disappointed because unlike my co-host Brian Brushwood, I foresee some major changes coming that will fundamentally alter the very foundation of humanity. And I use that word deliberately because I'm just reading that series now, and I've become obsessed with Isaac Asimov's concept of psychology becoming a mathematical science and what that means for us culturally. So in 10,000 years, let's say way out, as Asimov wrote in the Foundation trilogy, science became religion, religion became science. I do believe that in a post-singularity society or a post-collective consciousness society, that the culture and religion for which we base so much of our society and just general constructs will come from what are basically mathematical equations on predictions of the future. That we will have differing concepts and opinions of how we will progress and what will happen, and that will be the greatest cause of argument, debate, war, strife, everything that we look at the cultural differences in economics and religion now. what the future version of that will be the theorems of a mathematical prediction of where society is going.
So you're saying people are going to argue about things like basic mathematics and physics that seem obvious to us now and are tangible and easy to verify and all of that. That stuff will be at issue at some point. Am I getting that right?
Basically, that like the idea that we can look at a large enough, that we've recorded enough of society that we can look at the trends, and to a mathematical point, as it's thought of, or described in the Foundation trilogy, that if you if you only take the macro view of what societies will do, that there will be somebody who says this needs to happen, this can't happen, this person has to die, these people can't take office, this is a troubling trend before it starts, that we need to quash as a society, and that those the differings of those opinions of these complex theories will be our new culture.
I think there's something to what you're saying, especially because even right now, mathematicians and physicists are starting to debate whether time actually exists or is just a perception that we have imposed upon equations. And if they decide, you know what, there is no dimension of time. Time is just a human thing, and they get rid of it. There's so many implications to that fit into what you're saying, to where it's no longer about predicting anything. It's just looking at the math and going, well, there is no time, so it doesn't really, there is no cause and effect. Therefore, that's just a human perception. So there is no more ethical problem with moving bits around in the dimensions in which they exist.
Absolutely. And once we, as a society, put enough worth in these kind of things, all bets are off in terms of our own morals, in terms of who deserves power, who doesn't deserve power, redistribution of wealth, how we make money, who should die for something that they have or haven't done. As soon as we believe that we can look at larger issues with a mathematical assurance, with what we all believe is something comfortable, then all of a sudden all the rules are out the window.
I couldn't disagree more, mainly because your argument strikes me as so similar to the argument that hardcore Christians make about what would happen if atheism took root in the world. You're like, oh, well, if there's no God, then it's mass hysteria and everyone kills everyone else. And the evidence doesn't support that. The evidence supports that the way we treat each other tends to be universal, with the exception of how comfortable we are. When we're fat and we're happy and we're healthy and we're able to have as many kids as we want and they don't tend to die, then we tend to lose our scarcity mentality, and we tend to kind of adopt a universal set of do unto other beliefs. And I got to imagine that no equation would change that as long as we continue to be able to provide for our loved ones and have as much free time as we tend to have, that we would tend to treat each other with respect. And I don't know.
Well,
I'm not.
No. Brian. I'm not saying that we will have to, or that all of a sudden we will redraw those basic human instincts. I'm just saying that the reason why people will do things, and the reason why, in the same way that, there is unspeakable things that go on all corners of the earth for, fundamental philosophical or religious issues that me and you might, not agree with, the new reason to do that will be these theories.
The new excuse maybe, but the new reason I think will be the same reason it's always been, which is scarcity. Because the reason we have so much of our trouble now, it's the poor family who doesn't know how to provide for his family any other way. It's somebody who's been abused in the past and doesn't, and wants to push the hate forward. Even in the case of fundamentalists, the Islamic fundamentalists who, it's them being afraid that we're going to take their land, take what's theirs. And that's why they react the way they do. So I don't know. I think the excuse will be different, but I think the core reason is the same as it's always been.
There's always this issue of paradigm wars, I like to call it, where
love that game.
Sounds like a great. For a society to tear itself apart, you got to have paradigms that clash. So if suddenly tomorrow some major scientist came out and said, by the way, everybody, I've got a huge announcement. I've proved that God exists and he's right over there. And let's go. We're going to have a quick interview. the world to be polarized. It would not just be simply, oh, there's God and we're good now. And the same thing would happen if you got up and said, oh, by the way, everybody, I have an announcement. There is no God and I have proof and it's right over here. Same thing would happen. These paradigms would clash and people would kill each other simply because they do not want to accept either the proof or disproof of some other party. And so if Justin's ideas hit the fan and society is still steeped in all kinds of different directions in terms of religion, philosophical stances and what have you, that's where the trouble starts, and that's where society starts to tear itself apart. And then scarcity comes, because then you're like, whoa, I am being threatened by somebody who doesn't believe what I believe. Even though he's got all the evidence in the world, I'm not going to buy into that evidence. I'm going to stand strong and tall and keep this gun in my basement. And then when they come, I'm going to blow their heads off, and then I'm going to steal their food. And pretty soon it's, that's what makes things ugly in the future, in my opinion.
See, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a straw man argument, in that you imagine somebody willfully ignorant, and let's take the God thing out of it, and instead a similarly earth-shattering revelation. Let's say
evolution.
Number one, you are the person who put the God thing into it.
No. I did, but
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, let's take it a different way, because the problem with the God thing is there will be no proof that will make everyone say yes or say no. There's no way that'll happen. But something that would be just as philosophically revolutionary would be the existence of extraterrestrials or of discovering life on Mars or whatever. And a friend of mine said, like, dude, imagine you get up in 10 o'clock news. They're like, by the way, here it is, pictures of little green men living on Mars. What does that do to your day? What do you do after that? And I was like, well, you go to work, because that's what you do after every great revolutionary idea happens. The same thing when we discovered that time and space are just two aspects of the same thing, and they're actually part of something called time space. That's revolutionary and mind-blowing, but it doesn't change the fact that you need to eat. And so likewise, it's hard to believe, because we have experienced time and time again these philosophically mind-blowing, consciousness-altering revelations, and they've done nothing to change the day-to-day aspects of life. I can't believe that any equation is going to change anything.
No, I disagree with that, because there are changes and discoveries scientifically now that affect our political how we look to make policy on a state, local, and national, and global level. We look to affect change based on what we believe the evidence states. So if all of a sudden we have what we are to believe is overwhelming evidence that X, Y, or Z is going to happen, I believe that we will similarly take action to affect that change, either in a positive or negative sense. And that, I believe, will be the fault lines that will divide us going forward.
I need to take some action right now to move us along to 4 questions. This is the segment where we hit each of our guests in the face. No, we hit each of our guests rapid fire style with 4 questions about the future.
We're saving that for NSFW.
Yeah,
the whole punch in the face thing.
It's really hard to do over Skype right now. We're waiting for that update. They are not allowed to stop and think, all right? You have to tap into that communal energy of the space-time continuum and answer from the gut and give us, if not a more accurate prediction, at least a more highly entertaining one. Scott, kick us off with your 4 questions for Mr. Brushwood.
All right, Mr. Brushwood, are you sitting comfortably, sir?
I am, Scott.
All right, because from the video, it looks like it. Here you go. Here are your 4 questions, starting with the best hair gel. Go.
You know what? Wax. Screw gel.
All right. I knew there had to be some trick there. In the future, what percentage of the internet will be not safe for work?
0% or 100%, depending on where you work. So I'm going to say that's more a question of what kind of workplaces will exist. And I'm going to say that we're going to get more and more permissive. So I'm going to say 20%.
All right, perfect. Will our robot overlords juggle and do magic to entertain us?
Yes, because anyone who's been fooled by close-up magic will tell you that it's fundamentally different from seeing it on TV. And I've said this before. Everyone who talks about magicians says there's basically 2 types of magicians. There's everyone they've seen on TV, and then there's this guy. Because whatever you've seen before this does not prepare you for the experience of being fooled in person right in front of your face and having your mind blown. Kevin Rose would not shut up about how amazed he was by a trick David Blaine did. And it was a fine trick, but I knew it was much more about the fact that it happened. They're like, no, you understand. It happened right in front of me, Brian.
And David Blaine is a robot. Next, last question. Hover cars. When?
Never.
Damn it. That's what you all say when I ask that question. All right, there you go. Tom, are you ready to ask your questions of Justin? Is he ready? Is the bigger question.
Well, that is the question. Justin Robert Young, are you ready for 4 questions?
Oh, God, let's do this.
Are you sitting comfortably?
In a major way.
Then we'll begin. When should we give up and submit to our dolphin overlords?
When they take our crown by force.
When will we have our first robot president?
I'm going to go ahead and say 2020. Oh, wait, is there election then? Yes.
Yes.
It doesn't matter when the robot wants to be president. If it's 2020, he can go and be president. There ain't no election about it. Question number 3. What planet will turn against us first after colonization?
Oh, moon. Of course. It'll be the first one, and they'll be the first ones to be brats about it.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's the whole United States thing all over again.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Question number 4. In the distant future, dimly aware of our modern existence, will our civilization be laughed at, and why?
God, we laugh at our civilization now. We're a pack of retards. Of course, we're just silly geese squawking around. There's no way. That's in that 10,000 year future where Brian wants us all to be running around and making, like the Hangover quote that I just made. We're gonna look stupid and silly, like somebody quoting a talkie.
I have to point out the chat room is calling you on your third answer, which, the rules of 4 questions are you answer from the gut and it doesn't matter, but the moon is not a planet, technically speaking.
All right. Yeah. Well, but the first one we colonize is going to be the first one.
Well, I should have rephrased the question because, as we all know, the moon is no planet. It's a space station.
That's right. That's no moon. That is no moon.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian and Justin. This has been fantastic. Great conversation with you guys.
Sorry, I'm stupid.
No.
You talk pretty one day.
No, I'm gonna apologize for Brian too.
Oh, come on now. I feel bad that I just, when people say funny things, I like to.
No, God, Tom, you have no idea how much it's made me feel better that not only a professional like you, but somebody who Brian holds in high esteem has corrected him on his verbal stumbles, where when I do it, I tend to get yelled at sometimes.
You get to do it to me, Brian, for the rest of your life. Carte blanche to correct me on my verbal stumbles.
You know what? I don't use that much.
And thank you, Blanche. My fault. Yeah. Hey, wait, you don't have any carte or Blanche. You quiet down over there, Jason.
I put the cart before the horse.
You put the cart before the Blanche. Brian Brushwood, tell folks where they can find you elsewhere on the internet.
Every Thursday, we have new episodes at scamschool.tv. Every Thursday morning, a new episode. And, of course, every Tuesday night, coming up in just, 1 hour and 50 minutes, you can catch us at nsfwshow.com here on the Twit Network. We're actually in the process of trying to figure out a new name for the show, which makes everything awkward and weird. We're like, well, I got the show, but I can't really tell you the name because you just forget that name, and you got to remember the new name.
Yeah, well, that's like FourCast's time. We're right now recording this on Tuesday, but it's not normally going to be on Tuesday. It's going to be on Monday, and it's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific, but 7 p.m. Eastern and all that sort of thing. But your co-host on NSFW show, or whatever it ends up being named, is Justin Robert Young. And Justin, tell people where else they can find you on the internet.
Well, of course, NSFW, as well as the Weird Things podcast, which is on weirdthings.com. And, I write the blog there as well with a couple of our friends. So please... go check that out, especially if you like weird stuff like this. That's all we talk about is weird things.
Seriously. If you thought there was anything remotely entertaining about Brian being mocked by Justin repeatedly while they talked about the future, then you will love the Weird Things podcast. It is my favorite podcast outside of this one that I participate in.
There you go.
Check that out. And if you're into magic news, itricks.com. Check that out.
Scott Johnson, pleasure as always. Thanks for co-hosting the show with me.
Absolutely. It's a thrill to be on Twit. I can't wait to do this each and every week. I hope people are enjoying it, and we have a good, healthy, happy live audience each and every time we do it. I'm looking forward to it.
And don't forget, folks, you can leave comments for us at our website, fourcastpodcast.com. There will also soon be a twit.tv/fourcast as well, so keep an eye out for that. You can send us email to fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, for watching our first video edition. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
So long, Steve.
Steve.
Steve and Tim Show.